Welcome to a deep dive, everyone. Today we're diving headfirst into how to absolutely crush those data science intern interviews.
We're talking practical tips, real-world examples, even some insider advice from a fellow student who landed a fantastic internship at Chime.
And wow, talk about a collection of resources to help us unpack all of this.
Right.
Interview guides, Reddit threads, a Medium article from someone who actually landed their dream internship. Where do we even begin?
Mm-hmm. I'd say a great starting point is just the whole landscape of data science interviews.
Okay, yeah.
There's this perception out there that they're just super intimidating, like you need to be a walking encyclopedia of algorithms.
Right.
But actually, the interesting thing is, looking at all our sources here, the KD Nuggets guide, those Reddit screenshots, even that Quora discussion, the real emphasis is on strong fundamentals.
See, that's actually a huge relief to hear, honestly. I think so many people, myself included, we psych ourselves out thinking we need to know every single detail about the latest, deep learning techniques or whatever. And it's not true.
No, it's not true at all,
Yeah.
especially at the intern level. Look, you're not expected to have years of experience or deep expertise in every single niche area of machine learning.
Right.
What really matters is demonstrating a solid grasp of those core building blocks.
Okay, so let's break down those building blocks then. What
Yeah.
skills are we actually talking about here?
So 6.pdf, the KD Nuggets guide, actually does a really nice job of summarizing this.
Okay.
They highlight strong coding skills, obviously.
Of course, yeah.
So Python or R. Being comfortable with SQL for data manipulation. Having good foundation in statistics and probability, that's huge. And at least a basic understanding of those key machine learning concepts.
Okay.
Now, you don't need to be building complex neural networks from scratch or anything,
Right.
but you should understand how different algorithms work, at high level.
That makes sense. And I'm also guessing that showing some domain knowledge is important too, right? Even as an intern, you kind of want to demonstrate you understand how data science is applied within, the company's specific field or industry.
100%. Yeah, being able to connect the dots between those theoretical concepts and real-world applications is huge.
Totally. And speaking of real-world applications, one of the Reddit screenshots, I think it was 2.pdf, mentioned how interviewers love to grill you on your weakest areas. It's not just about highlighting what you're good at.
Right.
It's about being honest and self-aware about your limitations.
Yeah, that's such a valuable point. Interviewers, they're not trying to trick you or expose your weaknesses,
Right.
but they want to see how you handle those situations where maybe you don't have all the answers.
Right.
And honestly, being able to talk about your areas for growth thoughtfully and with a willingness to learn can actually be really, really impressive.
Absolutely. It shows a lot of maturity, self-awareness, which are both such great qualities in a potential intern. Now, let's shift gears just a bit and talk about the interview process itself.
Okay, yeah.
What are the typical stages that someone should be prepared for?
Well, both 6.pdf and 9.pdf outline a pretty standard flow. It usually starts with an initial screening,
Yeah.
often a quick phone call, just to gauge your interest and background.
And that's usually followed then by a round of technical and behavioral interviews, right?
Exactly. And we should probably acknowledge that this is often the part people kind of dread the most, those technical interviews.
Oh, yeah.
They can feel pretty intense. But remember, even though they're evaluating your skills, they're not expecting perfection,
Right.
especially, again, at that intern level.
That's reassuring. 7.pdf actually mentioned this. They said, it is easier than you think it is. And I think that's just a great reminder to not overthink it. It's so easy to get caught up in feeling like you have to have the absolute best, most optimized solution every single time. But sometimes it's just more about your approach and thought process than getting the quote unquote right answer.
I completely agree. And speaking of approach, I want to circle back to 5.pdf, the Medium article by the student who interned at Chime.
Okay.
They had this really insightful advice about quantifying everything on your resume. So instead of just listing your accomplishments in vague terms,
Yeah.
use numbers and data points to actually showcase the impact of your work.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah.
So instead of saying oh, I improved website performance, you might say something like, I increased average session duration by 15%.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
a small tweak, but it makes a big difference. It shows that you understand the importance of data-driven results and that you can articulate your contributions in a concrete, measurable way.
That's brilliant advice. Now, before we move on to the dreaded behavioral questions, because I want to touch on something we saw in a couple of sources. the possibility of a take-home assignment.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It seems like that's becoming increasingly common even for internships. Have you noticed that?
It definitely seems like it, yeah. And for a good reason, I think.
Yeah.
It lets companies actually see how you tackle a problem in, a more realistic setting. It's not just under the pressure of that whiteboard interview.
Totally. It gives you that chance to really showcase your skills, right? Your
Yeah.
coding style, your thought process. It lets the company actually assess your problem-solving abilities in a much more practical way.
Exactly.
So how should someone approach a take-home assignment then? Like, what are some things to keep in mind?
Well, first and foremost, treat it with the same level of seriousness as you would an in-person interview, right?
Right, for sure.
Don't rush it. Don't cut corners. Take your time, really think things through, and just, produce high-quality work that you're proud of.
Makes sense. And I mean, don't be afraid to refer back to the company's website, their mission statement, any relevant articles or blog posts they've written, show them that you've done your research and that you understand their business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Demonstrating that kind of initiative and genuine interest can go a long, long way.
For sure. For sure. Now, speaking of things that can be a little nerve-wracking, let's talk about behavioral questions.
Oh, yes. The dreaded behavioral questions.
Yeah. I think they trip so many people up, especially, in these technical fields. It's what are they even really looking for here?
Yeah, you're right. They can be a little more difficult to prepare for because there's no one right answer,
Right. Yeah.
But, interviewers use these questions to kind of assess how you think, how you communicate, how you might fit into their company culture.
So it's not just about having the technical chops. It's about demonstrating you can work well with others, that you're a good communicator, that you're someone they actually want to have on their team.
Exactly. And this is really where preparation is key.
Yeah.
Think back on your past experiences, your projects, your challenges, your successes, and have a few stories ready to go that actually illustrate your skills and qualities, in that concrete way.
I love that advice from 5.pdf about being concise and confident in your answers.
Oh, yeah.
It's so easy to ramble when you're nervous,
Oh.
but keeping it, short to the point can make a really, really strong impression.
Absolutely. Practice your answers beforehand, even if it's just to yourself in the mirror. It'll really help you feel more confident, more articulate during the actual interview.
Totally.
And speaking of, concrete examples, I loved that story about the students' LinkedIn outreach strategy.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
They didn't just send a generic message,
Right.
They actually researched the company, they found a project that resonated with them, and then they used that as a way to actually start a conversation.
That's so smart. It shows initiative, it shows genuine interest, and it gives you that talking point that, you're actually excited about.
Exactly. It's about standing out from the crowd, demonstrating that you're not just going through the motions, you're genuinely invested in the opportunity.
100%. All right, so we've talked about the importance of strong fundamentals. We've discussed the interview process. We've even touched on those sometimes scary behavioral questions.
Right.
But let's face it, at the end of the day, it often comes down to those technical questions.
Yeah.
So, what kind of technical questions should you actually expect in a data science internship interview?
Sure. So, the specific questions, they're obviously going to vary depending on the company, the role, even the interviewer.
Of course, yeah.
But you can generally expect to encounter questions related to SQL. Coding in your language of choice, Python or R, are usually pretty safe bets.
Right.
And, those more conceptual data science topics,
Okay.
they might ask you to explain a particular algorithm or discuss the pros and cons of different approaches to a problem.
And this is where that emphasis on fundamentals really comes into play, right?
Exactly, yeah. You don't necessarily need to know the most obscure algorithms or the latest cutting-edge techniques,
Yeah.
but you do need to have that solid grasp of the core concepts.
Okay, yeah.
And remember, it's not always about having that perfect answer immediately.
Right.
Interviewers often care more about your thought process.
Mm.
Can you actually explain your reasoning?
Yeah.
Can you consider different approaches? That sort of thing.
That reminds me of something from 7.pdf, the other Medium article.
Okay.
The author talked about how they didn't always have the most elegant solution on the whiteboard,
Right.
but they were open to feedback, they talked through their ideas, and, that ended up being really valuable to the interviewers.
Makes total sense. They want to see that you're a problem solver, that you can think critically and, adapt to new information.
Yeah.
And that's something you could definitely practice, by the way.
Yeah.
Work through some sample interview questions, maybe think out loud, explain your reasoning to an imaginary interviewer.
That's great advice. And it kind of plays into that whole like growth mindset thing that's so important in tech, right?
Oh, huge, yeah.
Being open to learning, to admitting when you don't know something, but being willing to like figure it out.
Exactly. And actually, here's a final, and I'd say crucial point from 9.pdf.
Okay.
Having a solid understanding of various models and then actually recognizing their applicability to different situations is key.
Yeah.
It's not just about reciting facts.
Right.
It's about understanding the why behind the what.
Oh, absolutely. So like imagine you're in the interview and you can confidently articulate not only which model you'd use for a particular problem, but why it's the best fit for, their company's specific challenges or whatever.
Totally.
That's impressive.
100%. Yeah. Being able to connect those dots to see the practical application of those models in a business context.
Yeah.
That's what really sets you apart.
It shows you're not just interested in data for data's sake, right? But that you actually understand how it drives real-world decisions and impacts the bottom line.
Exactly. Yeah, and that kind of understanding makes you a really valuable asset to any data science team.
100%. So as you gear up for those interviews, remember this, you've got this. You're clearly driven, you're proactive, or you wouldn't have sought out all these resources. You're already ahead of the game.
That's right.
Focus on those core skills, practice those explanations, and don't be afraid to really let your passion shine through.
Yeah, absolutely.
And remember those interviewers. They were once in your shoes. They understand the nerves, the anticipation. What they're really looking for is someone with a solid foundation, an eagerness to learn, and a genuine passion for data science. Be that person, and you'll do great.
You've got this.
Now go out there, ace those interviews, and take a deep dive into your dream data science internship.